Distinguished delegates, colleagues, friends, it has been my great honor to chair the high-level segment of the historical 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity. First of all, let me congratulate all of you on the very productive and fruitful discussions of the past 2 days. Chinese President Xi Jinping, UN General Assembly President Kashaba Kelechi, UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, and other dignitaries delivered inspiring speeches at the opening ceremony. President Xi put forward a 4-point proposal and stressed that we should build global consensus on biodiversity protection, jointly work for the conclusion of the post-2020 global biodiversity framework, and identify targets and pathways for global biodiversity protection, turn ambitions into actions, support developing countries in capacity building, and coordinate efforts to address climate change, biodiversity loss, and other global challenges, to promote green development through biodiversity protection, and to uphold a fair and equitable global order on biodiversity protection, firmly defend true multilateralism for protecting the Earth, our common homeland. President Xi's message is highly inspiring and injects a strong political impetus to global biodiversity governance. We also heard from a total of 190 representatives of 124 parties, 2 observer states, and 64 organizations, including His Excellency the Prime Minister of Niue. We also heard a testimonial from people living in a distant village in Yunnan province who live in harmony with elephants. I thank all of them for sharing their experiences and stories and commitments. Delegates have put in their great enthusiasm and efforts, which contributed greatly to the development of an ambitious yet practical post-2020 global biodiversity framework. This shows the expectations and strong desire of all parties to conclude and implement the GBF as soon as possible. Allow me to briefly summarize the main points made. In the past 2 days, all the way until very late last night, I was delighted to hear that all countries and many international organizations have demonstrated a strong sense of crisis responsibility and urgency, and have seen this as the last chance and opportunity to take positive action to reverse the trend of global diversity loss. And actions must be taken to promote the conclusion of a pragmatic and ambitious post-2020 global biodiversity framework so as to reverse the trend, so that we can achieve the biodiversity recovery by 2030. This is our target, and this is also our common aspiration. During the high-level segment, countries have showcased encouraging examples of practical and meaningful actions to conserve, restore, and sustainably use biodiversity. From protecting 40% of the exclusive economic zones of Niue, to mangroves protection in Côte d'Ivoire, and to minks protection in Estonia, your success stories are demonstrable. Countries are implementing and updating their national biodiversity strategies and action plans, and many countries have met or even surpassed part of the conservation targets. At the same time, several countries have increased, even doubled or quadrupled domestic and overseas funding for biodiversity protection, including through the GEF 8th replenishment. And some countries have also announced a series of key actions and commitments to support the implementation of the convention. We have heard praise for the concept of ecological civilization, which all parties said that it is not only a concept but also a great revolution in production and lifestyle which will guide mankind to the path of harmonious coexistence between man and nature. We heard calls from many sides for greater resource mobilization, capacity building, technology transfer, and scientific cooperation. In particular, support was requested for the establishment of a dedicated fund to ensure that financing mechanisms are aligned with the goals, as well as for the establishment of a comprehensive indicator and monitoring framework. In order to fully implement the GBF and promote transformative change, some delegates emphasized that the importance of full participation of government and social and society at large, including all sectors, stakeholders, indigenous people, and local communities. In addition, human rights and gender equality must also be taken into consideration in this regard. Many delegates emphasized that the issue of digital sequence information, DSI, on genetic resources must also be included in the GBF. We also heard about the importance of multilateralism in achieving the global biodiversity targets. We heard the willingness of local governments, regional and international organizations to support the future implementation of the GBF. Reversing biodiversity loss requires positive actions by the entire society as a whole. However, we are also soberly aware that which is also stressed by the statements of all delegates, that we're still facing daunting tasks ahead of us, which is the adoption of the ambitious, robust, and the implementable global biodiversity framework. We must accomplish this task in the last 2 days of this convention. This is our common responsibility, which requires our joint efforts. Delegates, colleagues, friends, before we conclude the high-level segment of the conference, we will have a panel discussion on contributions to the rapid implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework and the outcomes of the main parallel events of COP-15. I will now invite representatives of various constituencies to share their outcomes with us. First of all, I would like to invite the local government representatives, Mayor of Montreal, and also ICLEI Ambassador, Mayor Valerie Plante. Ma'am, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister. I would like to wish everyone a good morning and thank you for giving me the opportunity to take the floor before you today. As we're coming towards the end of COP-15, I'd like to speak on behalf of cities and subnational governments, ICLEI, Regions 4 and the Government of Quebec. As a local government, on a daily basis, we see the direct impact of the loss of biodiversity on people's lives, and we are there, we're on the front line when our citizens are suffering from the impacts of the loss of biodiversity in their living environments. For example, with murderous heat waves, we are protecting green spaces throughout our territory to combat this and to stop flooding. We are protecting our river beds, and to protect the ecosystems, we are banning pesticides and protecting pollinators. And it's at our scale that we can mobilize the population to take the necessary changes to safeguard biodiversity. For all of these reasons, we are prepared to do more because that's what our communities are asking us to do. Cities are indispensable partners, essential partners for the success of COP-15 and globally for the protection of biodiversity in the four corners of the planet. As the global ICLEI Ambassador and also Mayor and host of COP-15, that is the message that I wish to deliver to you today. It's imperative that 2022 is a turning point. This is where delegations have to explicitly adopt the formal role played by subnational and regional governments within the global framework. That is why I'm asking you to adopt Decision 16B CRP 9 on collaboration with subnational governments, cities and local governments. Thanks to this approval, I have the profound conviction that after this COP, there will be a before and an after Montreal collectively, we have to bring together these four essential elements. We have to have a concerted, inclusive approach. We have to have a common vision. We have to show ambition. And the heart of the matter, we need to have adequate resources to make it. That's the only way in which we can protect biodiversity throughout the world. Today, let's choose to be coherent and be bold, courageous. Let's choose this only path that's possible. That will be the future of our ecosystems, that will give future to species and the future of our species that depends on all these others. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor, for your statement. Thank you very much. Now, let's invite Mayor from Kunming to deliver his statement. Honorable COP-15 President Mr. Huang Chiu, Executive Secretary Elizabeth Murema, Mayor Planta, respected ministers and delegates. As Mayor of Kunming in Yunnan Province of China, it is a great honor for me to report to the conference on the outcomes of the 7th Summit for subnational governments and cities and our strong commitments to the implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework on behalf of the subnational governments and cities participating in this conference. Under the banner of COP-15 and the 7th Subnational Governments and Cities Summit, we convened in this beautiful city of Montreal. Focusing on the theme of taking actions for biodiversity, we discussed in depth the opportunities and challenges of local biodiversity conservation during the summit and reached a new consensus on working together to take immediate actions. We are encouraged to witness the approval of the new plan of action on subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities for biodiversity 2021 to 2030 at COP-15. This is a new guideline for actions and reflects the parties' recognition of the contributions and critical role of subnational and local governments at all levels, and has laid a significant foundation for subnational, local, and national governments to coordinate closely to advance the implementation of the new global biodiversity framework. The plan also will establish a roadmap for local governments to take action over the next decade. As guardians of local ecosystems, we made a solemn commitment at the summit and adopted a series of new initiatives and programs. We are keenly aware that the road for global biodiversity protection and conservation remains long and winding. Only by taking immediate actions can we reverse the crisis and implement the goals under the renewed global biodiversity framework at the subnational and local level in a bid to achieve the vision of living in harmony with nature. Now it is high time to take action due to the convening of the conference from Kunming to Montreal and from the formulation of Edinburgh Declaration and the renewed plan of action. We will remain committed to promoting cooperation between global cities and the regions, presenting local actions, commitment, and progress, pushing ahead with the implementation of the new framework through mechanisms including the Advisory Committee on Cities and Biodiversity, the Advisory Committee on Subnational Governments and Biodiversity, as well as the cities with nature and regions with nature. At the summit, Kunming and Aclay signed an agreement to establish the Aclay Kunming International Center of Excellence for Cities with Nature, which will work closely with Aclay's Cities Biodiversity Center to support local governments around the world to deepen their connections and enhance their capacities to support the implementation of the new global framework with pragmatic and innovative local actions. To ensure the effectiveness of local actions, we call on parties and other related stakeholders to support our great efforts and relevant measures for restoring the ecosystems and mainstreaming biodiversity. Meanwhile, we encourage the public, whole of society, academic groups, and others to engage in and support our biodiversity conservation actions. Let us work together to achieve the 2050 vision of living in harmony with nature under the guidance of the new global biodiversity framework and renewed plan of action. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Liu, for your message. I would like now to invite representatives from the science community. Dr. Alan Stoffen, Smithsonian Undersecretary for Science and Research and co-chair of the Consortium of Scientific Partners. You have the floor.
On behalf of the Consortium of Scientific Partners and my co-chair, Dr. Hernando Garcia Martinez, Director of the Humboldt Institute, Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we have a unique opportunity to lay the groundwork towards achieving the 2050 vision of living in harmony with nature. On December 11th and 12th, the scientific community came together during the 5th Science Policy Forum for Biodiversity and the 8th International Conference on Sustainability Science to discuss and make recommendations on how science, technology, and innovation can contribute to the effective implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. Some of the key messages can be reported as follows. Our financial and economic systems need to properly reflect the value of biodiversity as the foundation of a healthy planet. Natural capital accounting and science-based standards can lead the shift towards sustainability. Increased investments in cross-sectoral collaboration, including public-private partnerships, are essential to scale up nature-based and community-led solutions leading to improved biodiversity conservation and increased resilience to climate change. Successful implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework will largely depend on a robust monitoring framework. This requires strengthening capacities, filling gaps in taxonomic, geographic, and temporal coverage of biodiversity data, and sharing data more systematically at all levels. Public engagement and education are key to bringing biodiversity to the center of decision-making. In particular, young scientists and early career researchers play a critical role as agents of change in addressing the drivers of biodiversity loss. The scientific community is ready to do our part as we strive towards a more sustainable future, providing the best knowledge needed to support decision-making. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor, for your statement. Thank you for sharing with us the results of the discussions. Now, I would like to invite the representatives of Indigenous people, co-chair Mr. Lakbanuri Shepa, co-chair of the International Indigenous Forum on Biodiversity, to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. It's my pleasure to share with you all the Yunnan Tiotaki Nature Culture Summit Declaration. Participants, including indigenous peoples and local communities, came from all over the world at the Nature and Culture Summit held from 11 to 12 December in Tiotaki, today known as Montreal. We, the participants in Nature and Culture Summit, respectfully acknowledging traditional custodians, Mohawk, who call themselves Kanawakehaka, people of the Flint, who are part of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, celebrating the adoption of 10 December by COP-15 of the Joint Program of Work on the links between biological and cultural diversity. We, the participants, therefore, commit to work together and in a holistic manner to promote the recognition of the contributions and the rights of indigenous peoples and local communities, including free, prior, and informed consent, land and territorial rights, the distinct knowledge, innovations, and practices in conservation, sustainable use, and fair and equitable benefit sharing arising from the utilization of genetic resources and associated traditional knowledge in the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework and its implementation and monitoring. Recognize the diverse values of nature, including those values held by people who are living from, living with, living in, and living as nature as part of wider healing relationship with the environment, based on mutuality, accountability, and reciprocity, respecting the linkages between Mother Earth and biocultural resilience, and the diverse and deep relationship of people to place and space. Further recognize that nature and culture are inextricably linked through traditional knowledge, which in turn is expressed through language, governance, holistic worldviews, cultural values, ceremonies, stories, songs, and prayer. Prioritize language revitalizations and restorations with sufficient and focused funding and promote long-term commitments to increase the number of fluent speakers, and in particular, connect youth to land and culture through language. Support and review the updating of traditional knowledge indicators, particularly linguistic diversity, land use change and land tenure, traditional occupations and livelihood. Mobilize adequate and innovative financial resources and promote direct self-administered funding for Indigenous peoples and local communities to ensure the continuity of their biocultural diversity and support the implementation of the activities of the joint program. Indigenous peoples and local communities look forward to contribute to the implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sherpa, for your remarks. I would now like to give the floor to a representative of Chinese NGO, Mr. Xu Guang of the Chinese Environmental Protection Foundation. President, Executive Secretary, dear delegates, good morning. I'm very honored to speak on behalf of my foundation. 3 points: Chinese NGO, my observation, and some recommendations. The Chinese NGO plays a very important role in biodiversity conservation. The Chinese NGO are heavily involved in this line of work. They are important implementers, participants, promoters, and stakeholders in this exercise. Thanks to the guidance, support, facilitations, cooperation of governments, enterprises, local communities, and people from all walks of life, we have done much work in terms of biodiversity awareness raising, education, monitoring, protection of nature reserves, typical ecosystems, as well as community building and sustainable development. The Chinese NGOs have made useful explorations, which brought unique perspectives, profound thinking, and useful experience. In particular, my foundation organized the NGO parallel events at COP-15, which brought together many views and wisdoms of NGOs from many countries on different continents. We made presentations to COP-15 at Kunming, contributing to the promotion of the continuous improvement of post-2020 GBF. 2, some observations. Chinese NGOs have participated online, offline at the meeting. I have this realization that there's broad and firm consensus at the macro level. At micro level, on specifics, there are coordinated efforts towards building consensus and convergence. The GBF text is being continuously improved. We are very confident of the success of this meeting. Some recommendations. Consensus is the cornerstone of the success of the meeting. It is indispensable for all stakeholders to fully exercise necessary flexibility and constructiveness while adhering to the consensus. At present, the international community needs the most, especially the NGO needs the most, is more action. More actions are necessary at the local level, at community level, more cooperation, that is more cooperation with relevant UN agencies, government at all levels, professional bodies, enterprises, and communities, especially with IPLC. More support and resource mobilization, including, for instance, more support and backstop from relevant UN agencies, government at various levels, and business communities, as well as all sectors in society. The Internet has proven to be an important platform that changes people's way and act. For instance, we can use this tool through the exercise known as 1 square meter per person, organized by my foundation and Ant Group, raising people's awareness and sensitizing them to the importance of conservation and nature and ecology. Through these efforts, we can advance the post-2020 GBF process and make it not only ambitious, but also balanced, pragmatic, and achievable, so as to avoid a repeat of what happened with Aichi targets. This concludes my intervention. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your intervention. I now give the floor to the representative of business community. Business for Nature, you have the floor.
Thank you. Do you know why hundreds more businesses from around the world and from many sectors have come to this UN Biodiversity COP compared to the last one? It is because they now recognize their critical role and responsibility to transition from being part of the problem to being part of the solution. There are no livelihoods, no business, no economy without nature. At the COP-15 Business Forum a few days ago, many businesses shared how they are assessing and disclosing their risks, their impacts and dependencies on nature, how they are committing and acting, and how they are starting to transform their business practices and strategies to protect, restore, and sustainably use nature. These efforts are commendable, but I'm sorry to say they are not enough. Governments now need to adopt an ambitious global biodiversity framework that provides political certainty and requires business to contribute at scale and at speed. We need a clear mission to halt and reverse biodiversity loss by 2030 with smart targets that address the key drivers of biodiversity loss. We need mandatory requirements for all large businesses and financial institutions to assess and disclose their impacts and dependencies on biodiversity. Without this information, governments, investors, businesses, consumers, IPLCs are flying blind. We need to align all public and private financial flows to a nature-positive world with a robust resource mobilization strategy that includes reforming all environmentally harmful subsidies and incentives. Yes, forward-looking businesses are asking you to be ambitious. They are asking for stronger regulation. Their impacts, both positive and negative, need to be recognized, rewarded, or penalized. Let's celebrate that biodiversity and nature are now finally on corporate agendas. It will drive action. And now, with your leadership, through an impactful framework, let's drive the transformation we need to live in a nature-positive, net zero, and equitable world. Together, we can do it. We're counting on you, and you can count on us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sabe, for your statement. I now give the floor to the representative from the Finance for Biodiversity. I invite the CEO, Jan-Erik Sergostad. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you. Dear Presidency, Excellencies, parties to the CBD, I'm speaking on behalf of the Finance for Biodiversity Foundation, a 126 group of financial institutions representing 21 countries that have all signed the Finance for Biodiversity Pledge. Financial institutions are increasingly recognizing the severity of the biodiversity loss and the role our sector must play in halting and reversing the degradation of nature. This is evidenced by an unprecedented presence of the financial sector at COP-15. Furthermore, for the first time in history of the CBD, there was a full and dedicated Finance Day on Wednesday. In the run-up to that day and the aftermath, there has been many insightful sessions on the practical steps that the finance sector can and should take to address biodiversity loss in good coordination with public, financial sources and interests. We hope that the final negotiations come to a positive end and that the final text includes aligning financial flows with the goals and targets of the GBF, with strong references to disclosure requirements for businesses and financial institutions, and with an opening to leverage private biodiversity finance as one of the solutions for closing the finance gap on nature. As COP-15 unfolds, comes time for implementation and further action. For a strong implementation of the Global Biodiversity Framework on a national level, The immediate implementation steps we ask you to consider are to set disclosure regulation that require all corporates and financial institutions to assess their impact and dependency on nature using global standards, to support central banks and financial supervisors to integrate nature-related risks next to climate-related risks into their regulatory framework, to request transformation pathways for corporates and the financial sector, to create economic incentives for corporate and financial sector to incorporate nature into decision-making. We must succeed in greening finance as well as financing green. As an ambitious group of financial institutions, we are looking forward to support you in these efforts. We made a good way to Montreal, and we now hope for a good roadmap to move forward onwards from Montreal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Segostad, for your statement. I now invite a representative of Chinese enterprise to speak. Mr. Liu Chunxi, you have the floor.
Distinguished leaders, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Biodiversity conservation is not only responsibility of the state, it needs the participation of all sectors, especially businesses. I'm from Yili, a health food company and the first Chinese company to sign the UN Business and Biodiversity Pledge. Our involvement in biodiversity conservation is a strategic choice for business development. Here, I'd like to share with you some of my ideas on how businesses can promote biodiversity conservation. First, we have strengthened executive structure, improved management system. We set up an internal sustainable development committee which oversees the management system to analyze impact of production and operation on biodiversity, which allowed us to identify the factors affecting biodiversity and corresponding 6 major areas of action, including habitat conservation, climate change, conservation of species diversity, sustainable use of resource, environmental governance, and ecological conservation and advocacy, a life cycle approach to diversity conservation. Second, we play a leading role in galvanizing the whole value chain. As a company, we span the primary, secondary, and tertiary industries and has a long industry chain. We have been promoting the development of a green industrial chain since 2009, leading upstream and downstream partners to jointly pursue green and sustainable development. For example, in the upstream pasture and dairy farming sector, Yili has promoted a circular economy model of integrated operation, improved some 4,000 hectares of degraded grassland in Alukeqing County in Inner Mongolia, which effectively increased the vegetation cover of the core grassland area from less than 10% in 2008 to 95% now, literally turning desert into oasis. Third, we have implemented specialized projects to create a harmonious homeland. In cooperation with WWF, the China Green Foundation, we have launched a suite of public interest projects, including smart grassland monitoring, northeast wetland protection, Asian elephant habitat protection. By the end of 2021, a total of 270 hectares of wetlands were protected, and a total of 50,123 protected birds were recorded. Not long ago, in Indonesia's Komodo National Park, Yili also joined hands with G20 Indonesia Summit to launch a coral reef protection project to safeguard the rich ocean forest together. To protect biodiversity is to protect humanity. As businesses, we must act and work with all partners to find better and more effective solutions to build a community of life on Earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liu, for your message. I once again thank all the delegates who have spoken earlier. I thank you for the remarks made. Now this concludes this segment. I would like to invite the following speakers to come to the podium. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you. It was a pleasure. And enjoy Montreal.
I now resume the meeting. It is my pleasure to invite Mr. Manuel Pauga Vidal, Action Agenda Champion, to share with us a report, the Sharm el-Sheikh to Kunming to Montreal Action Agenda for Nature and the People. Mr. Vidal, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you to you all. In 2018, based on your vision and leadership, and thanks to the presidencies of Egypt and China, you convened and agreed to create the Sharm el-Sheikh to Kunming Action Agenda for Nature and People. With that decision, you honored the whole of society approach. You developed the ecological civilization vision, and you created the momentum that in this COP we have seen. Actors, sectors, programs, initiatives, pavilions. We can see that this momentum is a result of your decision as parties. Since then, the CBD Secretariat has organized a portal in which over 600 commitments from a whole of society have been registered. Today, we have just heard strong conclusions of each one of the summits organized by different groups, coalitions, constituencies. They discussed the role of cities, the vision of indigenous peoples and local communities, culture, the role of business, actions of the financial sector, science, and just transition. We can see the momentum that, based on your decision, you have helped to create. So, as champion of the action agenda, I am fully sure you are looking and wondering how to keep this momentum alive, mostly because we have to work together to implement the global biodiversity framework with a whole of society approach. So based on your willingness, we are strengthening the Sharm el-Sheikh to Kunming and Montreal Action Agenda for Nature and People, the Action Agenda for Nature, to effectively implement the global biodiversity framework. That is a key task. After the end of this COP, we have to implement with a whole of society approach, to define and organize clear transitions that can help the world to fulfill with clear and strong targets. To connect our objectives with the economy, we have to develop a strong narrative that can connect our nature objective with the economy to move our actions in a more effective way. To strengthen the whole of society approach and to keep our ecological civilization vision. To build credibility and legitimacy of the action agenda and its constituencies. The action agenda, it is a key element to build that credibility based in the legitimacy of all the actors that can contribute to achieve our objective. To report back and organize the action agenda events in coming COP. We don't need to wait for 2 more years to be all together. For the implementation, we have to start as soon as we finish the COP-15 organized under the presidency of China and here in the beautiful city of Montreal. To work with champions of the CBD Secretariat and the presidencies to lead and to move this process forward, and to collaborate among all of us. My report, it has been uploaded to the website information section of the CBD Secretariat. So you can see all what it has been developed based in your strong decision to create the action agenda for nation. So friends, colleagues, parties, constituencies, let's celebrate the action agenda achievement, and let's keep our willingness to strengthen the action agenda and mainstream the decision taken as part of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. Welcome for your willingness, welcome for the actions, welcome for the implementation of the Global Biodiversity Framework. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vidal, for your message. It's now my pleasure to invite Ms. Lucy Mulenke and Mr. Hector Allen Valdez-Suarez to deliver a visionary intergenerational statement to the room. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, excellencies, ministers, and all visitors within the complex. My first recognition is to the indigenous peoples of this land that we have been meeting for the last more than 17 days. And also want to thank the Kanawake community for holding and gathering us as indigenous peoples in their own community and working with us, and the government of Canada, the China presidency, and also the secretariat, the CBD secretariat, for really working day and night to make sure we are here today trying to discuss and try to come to the end of a successful conference. The outcome here is very important for us all, especially for us today, tomorrow, and future. In our communities of indigenous peoples and local communities, women and youth, it is an important practice to listen to everyone in the community. It is even more important to listen to children and youth of our communities and before we make any decisions. And that's why today we are here with our young man here, Alan, whom we are going to work together from 2 different continents, but we are one and we all must work together. And I just thought maybe I should ask Alan, what do you expect to come out of this particular conference?
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Lucy, for that question. Basically, young people, first of all, would like to thank you for this space, and we celebrate the intercultural dialogue in an open, sincere and constructive way, and young people, the youth, are seeking action. We don't want to use the same unsustainable practices nor promises for innovation or magic recipes to dealing with the crisis of the loss of biodiversity and other accompanying environmental crises. For us, the solutions already exist, and they have existed for a long time. These are living solutions, and we are part of these solutions. We have learned from our ancestors, our wise people, our elders, such as Lucy. We learn from our past, and thanks to you, we can build the future. So, Lucy, I'd like to ask you, what do you think that it's necessary to do, drawing on your wisdom?
Thank you very much, Alan. It's very, very important, and really very glad to be working with you. It's also very important to look at the visionary on how to make the future and how to start restoring nature, revise what is already damaged, and have a better and closer relationship to Mother Earth. And it's also more even crucial important to make sure that parties, negotiators who are here don't bracket us. This is also one of the most important things. We must look at and reflect at what is all about, not about concepts. It's about the people, the land, territories, the waters, our resources that we have been given to share. It is about our knowledge, our views. It is about living mutually and agreed terms with the pre-informed consent, and to make sure that we include a human rights approach. It's living in harmony with nature, and I hope, Alan, you are still with me.
Yes, I am. Hemos aprendido.
So thanks to you, we have learned to acknowledge and take care of our lands that are full of life. And we're continuing to share with these events together with youth, where we're having discussions on all of this, and we're recognizing the importance of present and future generations and intergenerational dialogue that should exist. We want to build relationships to live in harmony with nature and establish harmonious relations. Young people want to be open and learn to listen. We know that past generations have learned lessons in their peoples and communities, and we want to continue to listen to you, because in that way we can avoid making the same mistakes and we can acknowledge your best practices. Lucy, drawing on your lessons from the past, could you gift us something for our future?
Indeed, I will, and I really urge the parties to the convention and all those who are here, give us the framework. We need it. We need to start working. We are prepared in the community. We are prepared. The youth are here with their technology and with science and with our traditional knowledge. We are ready to go. And we really want to make sure that we take the journey to 2030 with a better future and a better health for all of us and for our future generation. We all depend on nature. We are all responsible. Let us work collectively together, take action as elders, and as many of you who are also here who have been elders for a long time. We are ready to move on, and we really want to make sure that the future is a healthy future for our generation. Alan.
We will continue to work with you. We know that it's only in this way between generations that we'll be able to continue to learn and face these challenges together. We're ready to continue to learn and share through these dialogues and these teachings that give us hope and knowledge that's generated through this intergenerational dialogue. And that's key to dealing with these various challenges. We're celebrating this moment together of intergenerational transmission of knowledge, and we welcome these new commitments for all of us. This is a form that will allow us to deal with what's coming up in the future. And I'd like to add that we can celebrate many cultures here, and we're not asking for a physical or material gift, but rather we want to have this new framework as an opportunity for new generations and children to have this space for hope and giving them life, peace, and true commitments. Thank you, Lucy.
Very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Solo me gustaría terminar y agregar.
And I would just like to add something, please. I'd like to add.
Be here with us. But she preparing an intervention on behalf of all the youth that had efforts on preparing the Youth Summit, and the official video will be in the HLD web portal. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lenke and Mr. Seres, for your very inspirational an encouraging message. Thank you again. So this has brought us to the end of all the interventions. Thank you for your statements. This made us realize that we are already in a transitional period. No single country or single person can do without others. So we have to be together and work with each other to promote the CBD becoming the most vibrant convention. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now enter the closing part of the high-level segment. I now would invite Ms. Elizabeth Mureba, Executive Secretary of CBD. The floor is yours.
Thank you, our COP-15 President, Minister Wang Rachel. We also thank our COP-15 host, Minister Stephen Gibbo, yourselves, dear excellencies, valuable stakeholders, colleagues, friends. As we close this important high-level segment, I want to thank our presidents and our host here in Canada, as well as the ministers and participants who have contributed to the work and discussions that are bringing us closer to delivering an ambitious post-2020 global biodiversity framework. I would like also to thank my team at the Secretariat, and especially that team which has been working tirelessly to facilitate your engagement at this high level, led by my colleague Christine Estrada, and who supported the co-presidents in the organization of this high-level segment and connected all the details. And I hope that all the ministers have been comfortable in these premises. Over the last 2 days, we have heard strong messages from the President Xi Jinping, the Premier of NIU, and the high number of ministers, vice ministers, ambassadors, heads of delegation, and array of organizations. And while progress was made, there is still some more work to be done. It is just 2 days. In time, this UN Biodiversity Conference will come to an end, and we must present to the world with what they have been asking for. And what is that? Strong, definitive action on biodiversity in the form of the Global Biodiversity Framework. We are no longer approaching the point of no return. Colleagues, we are here. Action must be bold, and it must be now. The outcomes of this COP-15 are our best chance to halt and reverse biodiversity loss and ensure a healthy, sustainable future for people and planet. We can no longer say next time or someday. No, it must be this time, and it must be today. And I'm encouraged by the progress, negotiations, and commitments made so far, including on resource mobilization. Brackets have been cleared and more clean text has emerged. However, I think we can still all agree that your negotiating teams still have their work cut out for them and are counting on your guidance to see them through. Just as Martin Luther King Jr. once reminded us, be true to what you said on the paper. And as we approach at the end of our UN Biodiversity Conference, I implore you to take those words to heart. Commitments have been made through the Kunming Declaration, the High Ambition Coalition, the Leaders' Pledge for Nature, and the Global Ocean Alliance, and many more. Now is the time to be true to what you said on paper and act. Excellencies, delegates, and colleagues, friends, now is the time to turn your promises into plans, your ambitions into actions. You have but a couple of few days to see this process through. It might take some compromises to find consensus, but the time to guide and encourage your negotiators to agree is now. Agree on actions that are positive for biodiversity. Agree on a healthy and sustainable future. Agree on an ambitious and actionable post-2020 global biodiversity framework. Agree to change the world. We simply cannot take this opportunity for granted. Even Mahatma Gandhi once reminded us, Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's needs, but not every man's greed. So let us focus on those needs, the common good, and the end goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murama. Dear delegates, I do not believe that there is anyone here today who does not want an ambitious and implementable and a balanced global biodiversity framework, as said by Ms. Murama. We have last step to the conclusion of the framework, but we have very little time left. We need to work hard for this end goal. Once again, I call upon all of you to work together with us. We need your sincerity, inclusiveness, and flexibility. Meet each other halfway. With that, we'll be able to arrive at the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. With that, we'll be able to hold our head high and walk out of this conference center with pride. We will be with pride, and we'll be proud of what we will accomplish here. We're all going to be held accountable. Once again, I want to say we're all going to be held accountable by our future generation, our children, and all life on Earth, as said by the Deputy Secretary General of the UN. We need to make this COP a turning point for success. This is our chance to conserve and restore our natural world. The world is watching. Let us not disappoint them. Let's not disappoint the future generation of life on this beautiful earth. I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank all of you for working day and night and for your hard work. Once again, I want to thank the host country, Government of Canada, the province of Quebec, and City of Montreal for their excellent organization and a warm hospitality. I also want to thank the Secretariat for their very good work. Finally, I'd like to close the closing plenary of the high-level segment of the UN Biodiversity Conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I
have an announcement. We are going to adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes, and then we will go to the plenary time of the COP-15, where we invite ministers and registered delegates to participate in the stock-taking session of the negotiation processes. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.